Oops. All right, well, I'm supposed to have this fancy 30-second countdown, everybody, but it didn't work this time. Obviously, that's user error. So let me just welcome you to the third installment of the Metaclusive Leadership Series. I am Tristan Higgins, the founder of Metaclusive LLC. After 24 years as a lawyer, I decided to focus exclusively on diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's my joy to be able to work with organizations and corporations who wish to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in their workplaces. And I help them do that by focusing always on belonging. Employees who feel like they belong save you money and increase your bottom line revenue. It's really just as simple as that. With this series, I'm very excited to highlight leaders in the industry, in various industries, who have advanced diversity and inclusion in their workspaces. I get to talk with them about the kinds of things that they've done, the problems they've overcome, what they wish they had known. And I really am excited because I get to talk with leaders in this space that are setting the standard. So without further ado, I'm going to read an introduction to Kunoor Chopra, who is my guest today. And here is Kunoor. Let me just read your bio so I get it right, okay? Kunoor is a co-founder and vice president of legal services at Elevate. She is a lawyer turned entrepreneur. Throughout her career, Kunoor has spearheaded the transformation of the legal industry by creating platforms that provide effective and efficient options to obtain, manage, and perform legal services. She's been instrumental in transforming the legal industry from her days at the forefront of the early days of legal process outsourcing to helping build one at Elevate. Diversity, equitability, and inclusion are close to Kunoor's heart, and she's involved in various initiatives and speaking engagements related to the topic. Hello, Kunoor.
Hello, Tristan. It's so great to be here with you.
Tristan, I'm so happy to have you.
For quite a while now, we've known each other.
We have. Do you want to tell everybody how long we've known each other?
Gosh, since first days when I was running my company, probably in 2015, 2016, right? We met back then. So great to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. So I can add a little bit. So thank you
Please.
for having me. Thank you for that background. So it's interesting, right? Our experiences influence who we are and how we go about our lives. So listening to what you just said, I would think, wow, Kunoor has a pretty cool background. She's done well. She's made it. And I agree, but I've also had a significant life experiences who shape who I am today, right? And coming to the conversation in terms of, why diversity, equitability, and inclusion are so important to me. So I grew up in a traditional South Asian family. I was born in Los Angeles, but when I was 15 and a half, I started to come out to myself as a lesbian, or, what it looked like back then was I liked girls. I wasn't sure that I was a lesbian yet, but, really started to go through that journey for myself. When I was at undergrad at UCLA, I started to come out, and that became an issue for my parents. And so my second year of undergrad, my parents actually disowned me. And I dropped out of UCLA for 2 quarters. And I lived on my gay uncle's couch. Luckily, I had a gay uncle in LA in West Hollywood. Lived on his couch, waited tables at his restaurant. And then eventually, a couple of quarters later, my parents probably thought, hey, we need to make sure that our daughter goes to school, complete school. So they continued kind of paying for my school back then. Graduated, and then I went to law school. When I was at law school, I took out loans, basically put myself through law school. I didn't even think my parents were going to show up at my graduation. They did, but we still had a turbulent relationship. So, it took quite some time, but fast forward today, much, much better. We have actually a very good relationship. They love my wife. But that influenced and impacted, my career and why this became a very important topic for me.
It just, I had to know that story, and it makes me love you even more because we have quite a bit in common there. But this is about you, so I won't get into all of that right now. Did I miss anything about your professional bio that you want to add as well? I really appreciate the personal background.
Well, I can share, kind of related to how my personal influenced the professional. So if that's helpful, and in terms of, again,
please,
why is this important to me? So first of all, when I think of diversity and inclusion, I think that a diverse and inclusive workplace is one that makes everyone, regardless of who they are and what they do for the business, feel equally involved in and supported in all areas of the workplace. The all areas part is important. And I love the way that Verna Myers describes D&I, which is diversity is being invited to the party and inclusion is being asked to the dance. And so that's kind of resonated with me. And I think I'll share a little bit about kind of my background professionally, which is very interesting. So because of my personal background, professionally, I wasn't able to truly be myself. And so, which is interesting because when I was at Nossaman, so my first law firm that I worked at for, they were fabulous, actually. So definitely a good cultural, political fit. I felt included, so I could be out there. The next firm I went to was a very conservative firm. And so I kind of went back into the closet and didn't feel I could be myself. Then I started my own company, Law Scribe. So 5 years out, decided to leave the practice of law because I thought there was just more good to be done in terms of bringing efficiency to the legal industry. So I started my first company in 2004, Law Scribe, which is where we met. What's interesting about my experience there is, as CEO, I was out in the US. So my colleagues in the US knew that I was a lesbian. However, Law Scribe provided offshore services to law departments and law firms in the US. So most of my team members were in India. And given my background and my family and kind of what I experienced with them, I wasn't out to my colleagues in India until I started Elevate. So
that must have been really difficult to be in two different countries with two different presences. I mean, what kind of toll did that take on you? Or maybe it wasn't difficult. I mean,
I think I compartmentalized it, right? I think at that point, a lot of us do that, right? So I compartmentalized it. I thought, oh, everything is fine, not a big deal. I'm CEO of a company. There's, no discrimination against me. Everything life is fine. Life is good. Then I got to a point where I was going to sell my company, and I sold it to a more conservative company. And so I was very nervous. It was my own perception of being out. So in the discussions with them around selling my company, I never shared with them that I was a lesbian. And so I joined the company. And when people found out, the reception wasn't that positive. And so I actually decided, for that and other reasons, that this was not the right place for me, right? So I didn't feel included. I didn't feel like I could completely be successful and bring myself to that company.
So let me ask you, if you, I'm sorry, if you had felt included at that company, would you have stayed?
No, because there were other reasons that I left, and that was relating to the business side of things, which was that I wasn't doing what I wanted to do because I really liked building things, and so that's how I got involved in Elevate. And so Elevate was a startup in 2012, and I met Liam Brown, who had built one of the most successful outsourcing companies back then, and he said he was going to do it all over again. But what stood out to me about that conversation, what was important was, one was, yes, we were aligned on the vision of building a company that was customer focused and the services and solutions we were going to bring to our customer base. But what stood out was during that first meeting, we were having lunch, and I can still visualize it. I was talking about my partner and using the pronoun game, right? They, this, them. So he said, "Oh, what does she do?" And automatically, like, this burden was just lifted off of me. And I thought, wow, okay, I want to build this company with this individual. And I want to make sure that we build a company where people can bring their full, authentic selves to work. And so that, I think, was truly the beginning of my focus on diversity, equitability, and inclusion.
So I want to touch on what you said, because there certainly will be people who watch this who are not gay or lesbian, or a variety of other sexual orientations that we won't list. You said that it was like a huge burden was lifted off of you. Can you talk just a little bit more about that? I mean, how important was that to you? What did that do for you when he said that?
I felt like, wow, I could actually be myself. And that made me, I don't know, it allowed me to become creative, to start actually contributing to the business, to start to build a successful business, knowing that I didn't have to hide who I was. And interestingly, he had also told some individuals, executives, who were going to be a part of the group in India, and they were also very inclusive and inviting. And even one of our customers, who's now a good friend, was in India with me, kind of those early days, and he was gay and he was out. And I thought, wow, if he can be gay and out, I can too. And so that was also a huge influence on me to then, at that point, I made a decision that I was going to make sure that everybody knew because not just for myself, but because I wanted to create a work environment where everyone knew that they could be like me or be who they were, right? Again, like you said, it's not about just being LGBTQ+, there's a lot of other diversity involved.
I talk frequently with clients about the fact that when your employees don't feel like they can bring their authentic selves to work, you're still paying them 100% of their salary, but you're not getting 100% of the employee. Do you have sort of any thoughts about that concept? Given that you've started companies and this is a really important focus for you, like, is that your experience that when people aren't able to be out in the workplace, they are maybe giving less than they could?
Absolutely. If you can't be who you truly are, and again, whether it's I'm LGBTQ+, you're of a certain ethnicity, a certain socioeconomic background, or a certain political background, right? If you don't feel that you can be who you are, you're not. It's going to impact your, how you work. And so, just going back to how I experienced working in my last company, right? Because I didn't feel I could be who I was. I mean, I didn't really. I know that it inhibited my creativity and my ability to do the best job that I could do. And then, it did influence whether I wanted to really be there or not, right? And then that takes a toll on how well you perform.
And you said that when you started Elevate, you wanted to have that focus with your partner. Can you say his name again? I apologize.
Liam Brown.
Liam Brown. You wanted to have that focus from the very beginning. Sometimes startups ask questions about how do we do this? And can you share a little bit about, was that a challenge, or how did you bake that into the culture at Elevate? I'm just going to put that title up again.
What was interesting about it was that, we thought we were extremely open-minded people. So, we're there, we're building our company, we're hiring people. And then, as we got to a certain point, we actually looked at our numbers and we saw, okay, we have equal amount of men and women. But when we started to look at the numbers around gender diversity and then also around the ethnic diversity, we were surprised that even as open as we were, the numbers weren't where we wanted them to be. And so at that point, as a company, what became very important to us was deliberate equitability and inclusion. And I think that's what employers really need to think about, is that we may be open-minded, but you actually have to deliberately focus on it to make it happen, whether it's hiring people who are diverse, whether it's making them feel inclusive or helping them feel like they belong. But if you just think that you're open and you don't do anything wrong, you're going to say, well, the pipeline of candidates wasn't there, so that's why we didn't hire diverse, or we didn't have enough time to do it, right? So create a different pipeline. Allow yourself more time, right? There's a lot of things that you need to do more deliberately.
How have you created a different pipeline? I love this because you're saying all the things I say, but they're coming from you. So that's fantastic. What did you do to create a different pipeline? Or what did you not, can you share with anybody who is listening to us a way that you helped overcome that?
Absolutely. And so one of the ways is there are recruiting companies out there who actually focus on diverse candidates. So one is we've actually tapped into them. So when we do have certain roles, we are reaching out to them. When we were looking at enhancing or increasing our board, Liam was very deliberate and said, I wanted to hire diverse people. And so he went out and went to some of those kind of companies and focused on hiring women and individuals with diverse backgrounds to be on our board. But he deliberately went and said, this is what I wanted to do. When he was looking for a CFO, he did the same thing. So that's how you change that pipeline, right? By making sure you're talking to other types of organizations sometimes to help you in that pursuit.
So it sounds like key was to specifically look to recruiting firms that focus on different backgrounds and different candidates, and to add board members that were different. They didn't all look the same, right? That's the way we like to shorthand it. What else have you been able to do either at Elevate or in your own career that you think might be great for other people to know about? Just what has worked well for you in dealing with some of these issues?
Sure. So I'll finish up with Elevate. So at Elevate, one of the other things that we've done that was fabulous is we have just fabulous allies. So with both Liam and our president, John Croft, he actually focuses on diversity, equitability, and inclusion. And just recently, and we do a podcast called the Elevate Together podcast. And just this week, the podcast came out focused on transgender rights and dignity. again, focused on deliberate equitability and inclusion. And so I'm very proud that my company is focused on this, and that we have allies who are speaking about it and bringing diverse representation to the conversation. Personally, I definitely have a lot of passions, which I've been able to bring to light. So one is, one of the reasons that I'm engaged in this work is because I have a voice, right? I feel with my voice and my background, I can make a difference. And so one of the things that I've focused on this year is helping and mentoring women. So I started our women's ERG group at Elevate. I mentor various women within the organization. In 2020, middle of 2020, I started a chat, kind of like yours, but focused on inspiring and empowering women. And I do that with Lucy Bosley. And it's called Youre Vibes, and we do it every month, the first Wednesday of every month, and bring fabulous women leaders to share their stories and experiences. Again, with the hopes of inspiring women out there. I also last year became involved in the first LGBTQ chapter for the South Asian Bar Association. So I'm one of the co leaders of that organization, which is fabulous to bring again kind of the LGBTQ support to South Asian Bar Association, and a personal passion of mine. And so I would invite anyone, if anyone has information on this, to ping me privately. But helping LGBT youth is very important to me, and because of my background. And so that's something I know. There's the Trevor Project, but that's an area that I'm definitely looking to get involved in the near future.
And so I'll try to put the Trevor Project in the notes after our chat. They do amazing work. So I didn't realize that there was this is in LA, the South Asian Bar Association.
It's national, but yeah, it's
the
South
it's national.
It's national, but yeah, I actually used to be part of the South Asian Bar, their local chapter in LA. I was on their board when I first started practicing, so it's nice to now be involved in this capacity. But yes.
Oh, that's exciting. So you mentioned a couple of resources, and I just want to give a little bit more detail for people. So on the Elevate Together podcast, how could people find it? Do they go to the Elevate website, or can they just go to podcast locations, Apple, Google, SoundCloud, all the places?
Check it out on our website, or where podcasts live. So yeah, you can check it out on Apple Podcasts as well.
Okay, and then for Youre Vibes, which, because I have a huge passion for superheroes, I absolutely love the title. But the hashtag, right? There may be some people saying, "What's a hashtag going to do to help me find it?" So can you just give us a little direction? How would we find, short of maybe following you on LinkedIn or connecting, how would we find that podcast or that chat?
It is. It's following us on LinkedIn. But if you go to the hashtag, of course, you'll see all of our past programs there. But Lucy Bosley, or if you follow me on LinkedIn. We don't have a formal website. This is something informal where we just wanted to bring folks to the conversation. So, but if you check me out on my website, you'll definitely be able to follow it.
All right. Well, that's very exciting. I love that. And I have seen some of your podcasts or your interviews, and I think they're wonderful. So I love, this is near and dear to my heart to talk about LGBTQ plus issues. And I wonder, is there anything when you were a younger professional that you wish you'd known about kind of the workspace and bringing yourself to work? I'm super open-ended. Is there anything that you wish you'd known back then?
Well, a couple of things come to mind. And one is, I think to do good work in this area, you actually have to overcome your own biases. And so that's one thing that I've had to learn. And I'll give you an interesting story. So a few years ago, I was out to dinner with Liam, and we were talking about a hire we were going to make at the executive level. And so he told, and this is recent, I said, this is, I'd say, 3-4 years ago. And he said, "Hey, we're going to hire this one person." And I knew this person was Republican. And so I all of a sudden lost it. I like, how can you hire this person given what we're building? And right, I mean, and think about kind of the mindset that I'm bringing and the stories I'm sharing. And at the end of that conversation, I just realized, I was like, wow, I'm definitely I'm going against what I advocate. And so I had to learn my own biases. But again, it stemmed from my parents were Republican, my family was, what I went through because of their them or their background. And so I had my own bias coming into it. So I think what was really important for me to understand my own biases and start working through them. I'm not perfect, but to at least be aware of and work through them if I'm going to do any work in this space. And so diversity isn't just me bringing people in to elevate that look like me, right? It's people who don't look like me. It's people who have, again, this wide range of diverse backgrounds, and making sure that all of them have a place at Elevate. And so that was a critical learning for me, and not even just in my youth, a few years ago.
I love that. I think there's a lot of talk about implicit bias right now, right? People are, it's kind of the buzzword, and then people are sort of dismissive. But you said that you got in touch with your own biases, and how do you think? So this is something people struggle with, right? How do you think you have moved yourself forward in that space, or lessened the impact? Right, the bias exists, but the lessen the impact that the bias has in your life. How have you done that?
It's getting to know people who are different than I am. It's having that conversation. I remember my wife early days also, she would talk to people. She got into a conversation with someone once who was a staunch kind of Republican. And she had this long conversation with him. And in the end, he kind of came around to saying, oh, wow, I've never really spoken to a lesbian. And, you're a lot like me. And you're actually, cool and not bad. And so what I learned from that is, and so she said, look, you have to talk to people. You have to educate them. You can't be afraid of them and walk away from them. So just because they're different doesn't mean they're bad. So it's having that conversation and having the courage to have the conversation and getting to know them and let them get to know you.
I think a lot of times when people, for the Republican example is a perfect example. We tend to shy away from the idea of talking to people that aren't exactly like us because of the fear of conflict. Do you think that's always the case? I mean, is there a way for us to, how have you been able to have conversations with people that don't look just like you, to open that dialogue?
Right. We can't think of it as being conflict, right? And again, we have to put those biases to the side. So, and it can't just be like, I'm a lesbian, you're a Republican, let's have this conversation. It should be, it's part of our identities, but it's, wow, I like sports, or I like, shooting guns, or whatever it is. But, starting to get to know the person, finding a common ground, but the identities are important, but you have to get to know people, because there's a lot more to us, right, than the fact that I'm South Asian or I'm a lesbian. So we have to not think of it from a conflicting scenario. And I think that will make a huge difference.
So you've mentioned a couple times your South Asian heritage, and I want to just introduce a concept to some folks who might be watching of intersectionality, right? So Kunoor, you're dealing with, I think, the intersectionality of three identities that can put you at odds with the quote unquote majority, right? Do you identify as a woman?
Yes.
I should have asked you ahead of time. You are South Asian and you are a lesbian. And do you think that your experience, right? Intersectionality is this concept that the identities kind of crash or clash together to create, for many people, a much worse experience with discrimination and harassment in our society. And that the further away from that standard of straight, cisgender, white male that we are, and again, always put this caveat, love straight, cisgender, white men. We're not bashing, but the further away from that standard you are, the more difficult your experience is. Do you think that you have experienced intersectionality? Do you think how has that played into your life?
Absolutely. So if I think back to what I went through when I was young, yeah, absolutely. It was so challenging, right? Having to deal with being a South Asian lesbian in my culture, being ostracized, and it was very difficult. However, when I actually look back at it now, I actually feel very fortunate because of that. Because also, if you look at the Indian culture, South Asian cultures, they can be more codependent, almost not letting you kind of go out on your own and do your own thing. They want to kind of keep you in the little cocoon and pod. And I saw that a lot with my family. But because I was different and because I had to go and be on my own for a while, I learned to be independent. I learned to be able to take care of myself and to survive on my own. And that's been a huge differentiator if I look at my family and where I am compared to some others in my family. And so it's almost a blessing that I had to go through it. It's painful, but it made me who I am today.
Yeah, but it didn't feel like a blessing a few years ago when you were just coming out and having to come out over and over again. What, given your particular experience and your expertise, you're as an entrepreneur and founded several companies, what advice do you have for either venture, entrepreneurs that might be watching us, or small business, or not even small, but business owners? What advice would you give them?
Look, when you look at companies around us, sometimes you feel like people have it right. And you're like, oh, if you're a big company, X, Y, or Z, they must know how to do diversity, right? Nobody has it right. Everyone's still trying to figure out what to do. And so I think I would say learn from one thing is learn from what other companies are doing. Coca-Cola recently came out and said, law firms better have diverse candidates, or we're not going to, we're going to pull our business from them to have to, we're going to pull 30% of revenues from them. We need to see 30% diversity. And so we have to see what other companies are doing, obviously fit it into ours, but just know that not everyone has gotten it right. Two is, as I said, we have to be deliberate. We need to figure out, if this is important to us, what are we going to do about it, right? And so I would challenge companies who say they want to do that DE&I isn't important to them. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to increase that pipeline? What are you going to do about promotions? How are you going to hire at your executive level? And putting some deliberate steps in place for that. And the other thing I would say is, on a personal level, is, and I'm all about calls to action. And so last year with the murder of George Floyd, and with the whole kind of the Black Lives Matter movement again coming to the forefront, my wife asked her Black colleague, she's like, what can I do for you? What can I do to help you? And so I would say, ask your diverse friends, what can I do to help you? And their answer was, speak up, say something, don't let there be injustice. So if someone says something, then so what that could mean is, if someone says something on Facebook or LinkedIn that goes against a diverse group, say something about it, call them out, right? I mean, there's a way of doing that. But if you see something, hear something, do something.
Like the terrorism slogan, if you see something, say something.
Exactly.
But in this case, it's a backpack of discrimination, right? I really appreciate that example. And, we've done a lot of talking in the last few years about how to support colleagues that are going through something that we're not going through, right? Based on their race or their ethnicity or their gender. What I love, I think, most about what you said is that it doesn't just happen. It has to be intentional, this idea of creating diversity. So I really appreciate that point. What has been, we've talked a little bit about obstacles and things like that. What's been a great joy for you in being who you are in the world and being open and out? What's been a joy?
So the most important thing to me in anything I do, whether it's, again, around diversity issues, whether it's around my job, is if I can influence or impact even one person, if I can influence, impact, or help even one person and help them in their life, that is joy. That's a joy to me. So when I hear people, within my company here, wow, Kunoor, you really helped me, have this conversation. You really helped me feel like I deserve this job. You impacted me. That makes me happy. But it only needs to be just that one person making a difference for them.
Well, I can say that you've impacted me in that way. So you're done. So you're all good. You can just relax and kick back.
Perfect.
Well, we're getting close to our time. So let me just ask you, is there anything else you want to add, or, anything else you want to share with me or the viewers?
The other thing is, I just, yesterday, one of my colleagues, or this week, one of my colleagues spoke about disability as a diversity, and how, it's important to help people who have disabilities, feel that they're included. And so it just made me real, because as he was having this conversation, I thought, wait, we're Elevate. We're inclusive. We welcome everyone. But again, there possibly is a group that doesn't feel like they're included. And so I think it's really important for us to be very clear within our organizations to communicate that and define those groups, that you all are welcome, that you are all loved, and make sure that we put programs in place to help each and every one of them. And so that impacted me yesterday.
I love that you said people with disabilities, right? So, one of the things that I talk about in my work and that other experts talk about, including my first interviewee, is that the disability doesn't define the person. And so when we say things like the disabled person or, the guy in the wheelchair, what we're doing is we're defining them by their disability. But when you use people first language, like you just did, and you just modeled it for us, people with disabilities is really wonderful. And I think it's really an under focused area, right? 1 in 5 Americans is legally qualified to be disabled, and we don't think about it, right? So I really appreciate you bringing that up as a highlight. So you are my third victim. Before we wrap up, I know you have this wonderful shirt on. Do you want to show us? You want to get up on your tiptoes there?
Yeah.
And it says "Born Perfect."
Born perfect. Yes, we all are.
I love that. And what does that mean to you, just before we sign off?
Hey, look, being an LGBT South Asian woman, I've gone through a lot, but I was born perfect.
I love it. I can't think of a better note to end on. Thank you so much, Kunoor Chopra from Elevate. They can find you, yes, on LinkedIn. Easy to find. Reach out with questions. If you want to talk with Kunoor about all the amazing things she's done, I encourage you to invite her to connect on LinkedIn. And I am Tristan Higgins again. This is Metaclusive LLC. This is where we talk about the being a metaclusive leader, which is really about creating that sense of belonging. And if you would like help with any of the things that Kunoor was suggesting, I would encourage you to call me. This is what I do. And you can reach me at tristan@metaclusive.com. I probably should have put that in my banners. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Kunoor, thank you so much.